Something is releasing metallic spheres above Earth, and the United States Pentagon has officially confirmed it has no idea what they are. They show up on radar, they show up on infrared, they show up on the cockpit cameras of fighter jets and the lenses of MQ-9 Reaper drones flying combat patrols over Yemen, Syria, and the South China Sea. They are small, they are silver, they appear to break the laws of physics. And the people whose job it is to figure out what they are running out of polite ways to say they don't know. This is not a tabloid story. This is not a fringe podcast. This is the United States military on the record in front of Congress telling us that small metallic orbs make up roughly half of every unidentified object their pilots encounter all over the planet every single day. And as of last week, the federal government has started releasing the files. So what are they? Where are they coming from? And why, after 3 years of investigation and tens of millions of dollars spent, can the most powerful intelligence apparatus on Earth not give a straight answer? This is what's actually known. On May 31st, 2023, in a conference room at NASA headquarters in Washington, a man named Sean Kirkpatrick stood in front of a small audience and played a video. Kirkpatrick was the director of the Pentagon's All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, the agency Congress created specifically to investigate strange things in American skies. The clip he played was 4 seconds long. It had been recorded the previous summer by an MQ-9 Reaper, the same drone the Air Force uses to fire Hellfire missiles at high-value targets. Across the screen drifted a small, silvery, perfectly round object. No wings, no exhaust, no visible means of propulsion. Kirkpatrick told the room, in plain English, that this was typical. He said the United States military sees these all over the world. He said they perform, in his words, very interesting apparent maneuvers. Then, he gave the audience a profile of what these things actually look like. They measure between 3 feet and 13 feet across, about the length of a king-size mattress on the small end, about the length of a Ford F-150 on the large end. They are white, silver, or translucent metallic. They cruise at altitudes from 10,000 to 30,000 feet, the same airspace where commercial passenger jets live. Their speeds range from completely stationary to roughly twice the speed of sound, which works out to about 1,500 miles per hour. They produce no thermal exhaust signature, which means whatever is propelling them, if anything is propelling them, doesn't burn fuel the way every aircraft humanity has ever built burns fuel. And in at least one case, Kirkpatrick told the room, the military had recorded an orb moving at Mach 2 against the wind, with no apparent propulsion at all. If that's accurate, it's a problem. Going Mach 2 through the atmosphere requires energy. Going Mach 2 against the wind requires more energy. Doing it without burning anything, without venting anything, without leaving any heat trail at all, is something no engineer at Lockheed, Boeing, or any defense contractor on Earth knows how to do. And the men and women whose job is to track every flying object near American airspace have been watching these things do exactly that for years. The other number that came out of Kirkpatrick's presentation was the one that haunted the conversation afterward. Of every unidentified anomalous phenomenon report the Pentagon receives, roughly 52% are spheres. Just plain, metallic, featureless spheres. The next category, called vector, accounts for 23%. Then, a small slice of cigar-shaped tic-tacs, polygons, and a long tail of discs, triangles, and cylinders. More than half of everything America's pilots and radar operators flag as strange in the sky is the same shape: a ball. Then there's the figure that quietly reshaped how serious people in Washington started to treat all this. The Pentagon receives between 50 and 100 of these reports every month. Most of them turn out to be ordinary: balloons, birds, Starlink satellites flickering in formation. pixelated sensor artifacts. About 70% of resolved cases trace back to mylar party balloons and lighting balloons drifting through restricted airspace. A sliver between 2 and 5% of all reports shows what the Pentagon calls genuinely anomalous signatures. Behavior that cannot be explained by any known aircraft, drone, satellite, or natural phenomenon. By the latest count, the office is sitting on 21 cases that, in their own words, merit further analysis. 21 objects that did things American military hardware cannot do, recorded by American military hardware, and nobody can tell you what they were. To understand why this is being taken seriously now, you have to understand what these pilots have actually been seeing. So let's go back to 2014. Off the coast of Virginia Beach, the F/A-18 Super Hornet pilots of the USS Theodore Roosevelt's Air Wing started seeing them every single day. Lieutenant Ryan Graves, who has since retired from the Navy and testified before Congress, told 60 Minutes that his squadron, the Red Rippers, would track these spheres on radar for 12 hours at a stretch. One pilot, on a training run east of Virginia Beach, watched a dark cube suspended inside a clear sphere pass within 50 feet of his aircraft and his wingman's. Squadron hazard reports labeled the sphere a critical risk and a severe threat to naval aviation. These are the official terms used by the United States Navy in formal safety paperwork. Critical risk, severe threat. A decade earlier, off San Diego, came the encounter that would eventually pry the entire subject out of the shadows. November 14, 2004. Commander David Fravor and Lieutenant Commander Alex Dietrich were vectored to an intercept by the USS Princeton's radar operators. What they found, hovering over the Pacific roughly 100 miles southwest of San Diego, was a smooth, white, capsule-shaped object about 40 feet long, the size of a city bus. It had no wings, it had no exhaust, it moved like nothing they had ever seen. Senior Chief Kevin Day, watching the radar from the Princeton, tracked objects descending from over 80,000 feet down to 20,000 feet in less than a second. A descent rate that, if the radar wasn't lying, exceeds Mach 50. Speeds at which any conventional aircraft would tear itself apart from the heat alone. Fravor told the House Oversight Committee in July 2023, on the public record, that the technology he encountered that day was far superior to anything the United States had, far beyond the material science available, and beyond anything the country was likely to develop in the next 10 to 20 years. That's a Navy commander saying, under oath, that a foreign or unknown actor has aerospace capabilities a generation ahead of the most advanced military on Earth. So where are they coming from? That's the question nobody can answer, and it's the question that has driven a slow, careful, deeply uncomfortable disclosure process inside Washington for the better part of a decade. The most concerning footage to come out of that process did not surface in a documentary. It was played in a congressional hearing room. On September 9, 2025, Representative Eric Burleson, chairing a House task force, played a clip dated October 30, 2024. The video showed an MQ-9 Reaper flying over Yemen, locking onto an orb in flight and firing a Hellfire missile at it. The Hellfire is a 100-pound air-to-ground missile designed to obliterate tanks. The orb appeared unaffected. Journalist George Knapp, sitting on the panel, said out loud what everybody in the room was thinking. What the hell is that? That same hearing produced something the United States military had never done before. For the first time in the history of the country, an active-duty Navy service member testified publicly about a UAP encounter. Senior Chief Petty Officer Alexandro Wiggins, assigned to the USS Jackson, described what he and his crew had observed on February 15, 2023, in the Whiskey 291 training area off Southern California. He saw a self-luminous tic-tac-shaped object emerge from the surface of the ocean and link up with 3 identical craft already in the air. His exact words on the public record. "What I observed and what our crew recorded was not consistent with conventional aircraft or drones. Things emerged from the water, joined a formation already overhead, flew off. The United States Navy filmed it. Nobody knows what it was. The pattern of these incidents over American military bases has been escalating. Beginning December 6, 2023, swarms of drones, or whatever they were, overflew Joint Base Langley-Eustis in Virginia for 17 consecutive nights. Air Force General Mark Kelly told the Wall Street Journal that one of these objects measured roughly 20 feet long, about the length of a school bus cut in half, and was clipping along at over 100 miles per hour at altitudes between 3,000 and 4,000 feet. F-16 combat air patrols were scrambled. NASA loaned the military a high-altitude WB-57 surveillance jet. And per General Glenn Van Herk, who commanded NORAD at the time, none of it worked. He told reporters he was not aware of any success the military had in identifying or stopping the incursions. 17 nights. American fighter jets unable to engage. American sensors unable to identify. American command unable to do anything but watch. Since 2022, North American Aerospace Defense Command has logged over 600 drone incursions over United States military installations. The Pentagon's UAP office logged 18 drone sightings near American nuclear facilities in a single recent reporting year, including 6 straight nights of unidentified objects over a Virginia fuel cycle plant. The Wall Street Journal reported in October 2023 that 5 drones flew over the Energy Department's Nevada National Security Site. None of these were ever publicly identified. None of them were ever publicly captured. None of them stopped. You might be thinking about the wave of drone sightings that hit New Jersey in late 2024, when over 5,000 reports flooded local police, when President Trump demanded answers, when the governor wrote a formal letter to the White House. The federal investigation found something different. The Joint Pentagon, Homeland Security, FAA, and FBI inquiry concluded there was nothing anomalous. Most of those sightings were commercial and hobbyist drones, manned aircraft on approach to Newark and JFK, and ordinary stars and planets misidentified at night. One famous grey mist drone turned out to be a Beechcraft Baron flying through turbulence. The New Jersey panic was a panic. The base incursions are something else entirely. Then there's the testimony that turned the temperature of the entire debate up by 100 degrees. On July 26, 2023, a former intelligence officer named David Grush sat in front of a House subcommittee and said something extraordinary. He testified that he had been informed of a multi-decade UAP crash retrieval and reverse engineering program inside the United States government. He was not part of it. He had been denied access to it. But he had been told it existed by, in his estimation, more than 40 separate first-hand witnesses inside intelligence and defense compartments. When Representative Nancy Mace asked him directly whether biological remains had been recovered from any of these crashes, his answer was 4 words long. Biologics came with some. Non-human, in his words, in the assessment of the people he had spoken to. The Pentagon denied it. Spokesperson Susan Goff, on the record, said there was no verifiable information to substantiate the existence of any reverse engineering program. In March 2024, the Pentagon's UAP office released its own historical record review. a 63-page document based on roughly 30 interviews with the people making these claims, with full access to the most highly classified compartments in the United States government. Their conclusion: no verifiable evidence that the US government or private industry has ever had access to extraterrestrial technology. A piece of metal alleged to be from a crashed off-world spacecraft was tested. It came back as a manufactured terrestrial alloy of magnesium and zinc. The whistleblower narrative, the office concluded, was a textbook example of circular reporting, traceable to a small interconnected group of people whose claims all originated from a 2009 Defense Intelligence Agency program and a failed Department of Homeland Security proposal that was rejected as without merit. That's where the public record splits in two. On one side, sworn congressional testimony from named former intelligence officials saying the United States has crashed craft, possibly biological remains, in some kind of black program nobody can confirm. On the other side, the Pentagon office that actually has the security clearances saying they looked and there's nothing there. What both sides agree on is what's in the sky right now. Which brings us to last week. On May 8, 2026, the Trump administration launched something called Pursue, the Presidential Unsealing and Reporting System for UAP encounters. War.gov/UFO went live. 162 files dropped at once, 120 PDFs, 28 videos, 14 images. The largest single declassification of UAP material in the history of the United States. What's in there? Apollo 12 and Apollo 17 lunar photographs showing anomalous lights on the surface of the moon. An Indo-Pacific encounter with a football-shaped object near Japan in 2024. Footage from the Aegean Sea in 2023 showing an object making 90-degree turns at roughly 80 miles per hour, which is something no aircraft can survive structurally without ripping its pilot apart. Imagine sitting in the cockpit of a fighter jet at highway speed and trying to make a perfectly square turn without slowing down. Your body would liquefy against the side of the canopy. The object in the Greek footage didn't even appear to register the maneuver. There's also an inverted teardrop object filmed over the United Arab Emirates in 2024, and the 1947 Roswell FBI memo with reduced redactions for the first time since it was filed. Trump's accompanying statement. With these new documents and videos, the people can decide for themselves what the hell is going on. Have fun and enjoy. War Secretary Pete Hegseth said the files had long fueled justified speculation and that it was time the American people see them for themselves. Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard called it the first in an ongoing release effort. FBI Director Kash Patel promised unfettered access to declassified files. The next batch is reportedly scheduled to drop within weeks. And yet, the same Sean Kirkpatrick, who told us about the Orbs in the first place, said the May release was likely to fuel speculation rather than quell it. He warned readers not to get their hopes up. Astrophysicist Neil deGrasse Tyson, in a New York Times op-ed 2 days before the drop, predicted the files would be anticlimactic and joked that he would be delighted if they came accompanied by an actual alien, alive or dead or undead, preferably alive. As of this recording, no alien has shown up. So what are we left with? Something is in the sky over Earth. Small, silvery, spherical objects, somewhere between 3 and 13 feet across. They show up over American carrier strike groups in the Pacific. They show up over American drone patrols in the Middle East. They show up over American nuclear weapons facilities in Virginia and Nevada. They show up over Greek waters and Japanese coastlines and Yemeni deserts. And they apparently shrug off Hellfire missiles. The United States Department of Defense, after spending around $25 million per year for 3 straight years investigating them, has confirmed they are real, has confirmed they are everywhere, and has confirmed that a small, persistent, irritating fraction of them does things that no human technology can do. The Pentagon does not know what they are. They have, on the record, ruled out exactly nothing about a small subset of cases. Their best resolution rate captures roughly 70% as balloons. They've identified Starlink streaks. They've matched birds to sensor artifacts. After all of that work, they are still left with a residue of cases that defy every framework they have. 21 of them, just from the most recent reporting period, sitting in a folder marked Merits Further Analysis. The most likely explanation, statistically, is that those 21 cases will eventually be resolved as classified American or foreign hardware that nobody is allowed to talk about yet. Stealth drones, hypersonic test platforms, adversary reconnaissance systems. The Pentagon's own historical review noted that some portion of UFO sightings, going back to the 1940s, have always turned out to be experimental aircraft. The famous Roswell debris, declassified decades later, was a top-secret balloon array called Project Mogul, designed to detect Soviet nuclear tests. Most mysteries collapse, eventually, into either physics we already understood or hardware we hadn't been told about yet. Not all of them. Pilots like Ryan Graves and David Fravor are not lying. The radar tracks from the USS Princeton are not faked. The Reaper footage is not fabricated. The objects emerging from the ocean off San Diego in February 2023, witnessed by an active duty senior chief who testified about it in front of Congress 2.5 years later, are on tape. Whatever those things are, they are not nothing. If they are foreign hardware, then a hostile power has aerospace capabilities a generation ahead of the United States, and that hostile power has been flying that hardware over American carrier strike groups for at least 11 years, with impunity, and the Pentagon has been completely unable to stop them. That would be the most catastrophic intelligence failure in the history of American defense. If they are American hardware, then somebody is flying classified test platforms through commercial airspace at Mach 2, panicking civilian pilots and active-duty Navy crews, and lying to Congress about it. That would be a constitutional crisis of a kind the country has not yet processed. If they are neither, then we are looking at something else. Something the Pentagon's UAP office, after 30 interviews and 63 pages of analysis, was unwilling to put a name on. Something Sean Kirkpatrick described as performing very interesting apparent maneuvers all over the world and walked off the stage rather than say more. There is one more thing to sit with before this ends. In the most viewed UAP testimony in modern American history, the words that come back over and over are not from generals or scientists. They are from men who have flown F/A-18s off the deck of a carrier, who have spent careers earning the kind of clearances that let them see what the rest of us cannot. What they keep saying is some version of the same thing. We saw them. We tracked them. We have no idea what they were, and nobody we asked could tell us. The orbs are real. Whatever is releasing them, whoever is flying them, wherever they're coming from, they are above our heads right now. The same way they were above our heads last week. The same way they have been since at least 2004, and probably since 1944, when Allied bomber crews over the Rhine Valley first started reporting small, glowing balls flying alongside their aircraft. The crews called them Foo Fighters. They thought the Germans were testing some new weapon. The Germans, when interviewed after the war, said the same thing about us. Neither side had built them. 80 years later, with billions of dollars in modern radar and infrared and orbital imaging at our disposal, With congressional task forces and a dedicated Pentagon office and a sitting president promising to release every file, we are still describing them in roughly the same terms. Small, silver, round, fast, silent, everywhere. Somewhere right now, in a secure room in Washington, on a screen connected to a satellite or a Reaper or a fighter jet, another one is being tracked. Nobody knows what it is. Nobody knows where it came from. Nobody knows what it wants, or whether it wants anything at all. The most powerful military in human history has been watching them for decades. They have spent a fortune trying to figure out what they are. They have interviewed the witnesses, tested the metal, run the radar through every model they have. They have come back every time with the same answer: we don't know. Maybe one day they will. Maybe the next file release, or the one after, or the one in 2028, will contain the sentence that ends the mystery. Maybe a Reaper somewhere over the Pacific is about to record the footage that finally explains it. Or maybe these things will keep appearing the way they have for 100 years, in small numbers, doing the impossible, refusing to land, refusing to communicate, refusing to be anything we can name. Just there, above us, watching or not watching, while we argue about what to call them. That's where the official record stands tonight. Real, confirmed, everywhere. And as far as the United States government is willing to admit on paper, completely unexplained. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.